Dads, in it. There's an old saying that goes, "We are doomed to repeat the sins of our fathers." And indeed, I think that's true. I've just got back from a trip to Singapore with my dad, and seeing him interact with his own father has brought me a level of peace, which is so lovely. So, as an actual genius and well adjusted human being, I'm going to share with you why your daddy issues are maybe just a skill issue. So the first thing you need to do to get over your daddy issues is to your father. Obviously, this is a big concept in mythology, patricide, but perhaps it reveals a universal truth about what we have to do as people. And when I say father, I don't mean, double. What I'm talking about is this kind of like mental image that you have of your dad. They'll probably either be a god or some sort of monster. There's very little in between. And that's super unhealthy. We need to destroy that image that we have of them. And in fact, the rest of the steps are kind of built around that. But in order to first kill that mental image, we need to realize that it is just a mental image. It's just our perspective of who our father is. To get rid of it is, by the way, all of these steps, I'm going to go through them relatively quickly, but they are like not that easy to do, right? So each one could be months of therapy. Or, I mean, if you want to speed run it, go for it. Let's see. I can't wait to see someone any percent solving their daddy issues. So once we've understood that our own mental image is just our mental image and isn't really an objective look at who they are, and is in fact entirely subjective, we need to then rebuild an objective narrative of where they are using facts and logic. So imagine you're a detective or a journalist looking to piece together your father's life. Start with some basic questions like, where were they born? Who were their parents? What life experiences have they had? And as we're doing this, make sure that we're not putting on any emotions attached to it. We're purely looking at the facts. What happened? When did it happen? And trying to piece together that story. Now, this might be easier for some of you than others. I'm still, I guess, lucky enough to have my dad in my life. But there is a bunch of secondary sources as well, potentially. So maybe your mother. If you know anyone who used to date your dad, people who knew him, the siblings that he had, maybe there's some old clippings. And I don't want to sound disrespectful to people who have just like had no father figure in their lives whatsoever. To them, I don't know if I've got any good advice. The reason why we're doing this is because of the next step. So step 3 for me was taking them off their pedestal. Once I had a good sense of objectively who they were, I needed to remove them from this kind of like mythological position that they had in my life of the father, right? In the same way that romantic interactions are kind of fucked by media, I think so are familial relations. So you have all of these expectations as to what a father should be, and they can come into conflict with reality. So what we need to do as sons and daughters is to humanize them and realize that they probably were just doing the best with the tools that they were given. yeah, like seeing my dad interact with his parents, I was like, oh, this makes so much sense now. I get it. And then you realize, wow, my father isn't this thing that I thought they were. You realize that they are just like anyone else, a human being who's probably struggling with some things, does some things well, does lots of things poorly. But ultimately, we've taken them off that pedestal and we've got their objective story. And then we can begin to see them less as a monster or a god and see them more as who they are. The next step is probably the most fun step, and that's where you blame them for literally everything. All of your issues, all of the negative traits that you have. I mean, it's almost fun to like list them or hang out with someone and be like, all right, today we're going to have a pity party. We're going to talk all about how our dads fucked us up. And keep a list. And then realize that traits are neither good nor bad. They just are. And there are good aspects to things and there are bad aspects to things. So, for example, if your father was emotionally distant, that's kind of like bad, and then means that we perhaps have difficulty emotionally connecting with other people, but at the same time, we have developed resilience and independence and self-soothing mechanisms. If your parents smothered or coddled you, that may have instilled in you a healthy questioning of authority, or maybe just modeled a way for you to provide security and comfort in others. Like it or not, your parents helped shape you as who you are today, for better or for worse. The next step is quite difficult to do. I'd say I'd definitely list this as like 7 out of 10 in terms of hardness. Reading Ulysses, slightly above it. Climbing Mount Kilimanjaro, slightly below it. And that's take responsibility. So whilst your parents were responsible for you back then and giving you all of this like trauma and emotional difficulty, you are responsible for yourself now. When we blame people for things, and again, we've gone through that step. We've blamed them for everything. We already know it. I don't want to watch Endgame again. I've seen it twice. We can move on. And then we take responsibility for changing ourselves. So I had this big belief that it was my responsibility to like fix the relationship with my dad, right? I would do everything I could to change myself and change them. Because in doing that, it would be healed and it would be solved. But then I realized I can't change them. That's not my responsibility. The only responsibility that I have is to change myself and to realize that I can change and that I'm willing to put in the work and that I can read all these books and then speak to other people about their experiences and then go through that journey myself. But they can't come along for the ride with me unless they're willing. The final aspect is probably the hardest. Harder than reading Ulysses. Harder than climbing Kilimanjaro. Harder than even taking responsibility for your own life. And that is respect them. Now, I don't mean respect them in the sense of wanting to emulate them. I don't mean respect in terms of even liking them. I don't mean respect in even like wanting to spend time with them or take on board what they have to say. When I say respect them, I mean appreciate who they are. This is them. You've now got an objective look at who they are. And you have to come to terms with that. This is their core essence. This is their being. There'll be good bits and there'll be bad bits. Now, obviously, I'm by no means saying that some fathers out there have like loads of good traits, but no human being is so basic that they are just pure evil. There'll be good bits and there'll be bad bits, and it's up to us to recognize that. And once you do, you will finally be at peace and done something harder than reading Ulysses and climbing Kilimanjaro. So that's the video. I have some book recommendations for you if you would like to do this yourself or you're just wanting to know where to go next. Steve Bidoof's Manhood, really, really great book. If you're a lady watching this, the chapters on fatherhood are universal, I think, and how to interact with your father and how to see them. If you're a guy, this is essential reading. Actually, if you're a gal, read this and you'll get a good sense of like why men are the way they are and where all of their insecurities and kind of weirdness comes from. The next book that perhaps is more exclusive to me, but let's make a broad sweeping statement about society and say that the previous generation of fathers had bad fathers. Often. In fact, a lot of parents are bad. So Adult Children of Emotionally Immature Parents is fantastic. Oh my goodness. Reading this, I just kept sending screenshots of this, of the words to my sister, being like, isn't this crazy? Isn't this crazy? Because it made me feel not crazy. And I realized, oh, okay, this is what my father is expressing. It's emotional immaturity, and there are loads of really good insights. It's less about how to deal with it, but just having that kind of like background knowledge about where a lot of the difficulties in communication with an emotionally immature parent come from. The final book I have to recommend is The Emotionally Absent Mother, which is written by women for women. But yeah, I just found it super useful. Obviously, reading it took a bit of mental effort to change all of the pronouns in the text, but it's 2024, man. Changing pronouns, super easy, and you need to practice. So this one was really good. Again, getting a good foundational knowledge, but also there are some techniques for how you can process some difficult interactions that you might have with your emotionally absent mother/father. So yeah, like, comment, subscribe. Let me know any issues that you have with your dad. Or perhaps maybe a technique that you found to help you deal with that relationship in the comments below. My name's Nate. I'll see you later.